Evelyn, you can start.
Yes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today, we are in the second series of our talk. 2 weeks ago, if you all remember, we have talked about the outlook in 2022, which does not look very optimistic in terms of economy due to two factors. One is because of low productivity. There's almost no productivity this year. As now we are already in the second half of the year, we already feel that strain coming in. And also in terms of financial, there will be also a lot of financial challenges, especially now we are seeing in a lot of nations. And this talk, PC and I have purposely scheduled before the August because due to a very major reset that will expect to happen in August from the astrology calculation. Later on, I will explain on the astrology calculation and what is exactly happening. Okay, so we term that this is a clash in terms of astrology, means that there's a clashes in the element. And normally if the clash in element, there will be big change. So this is how, that's why it says that the clashes in August time frame will bring potential reset globally. And it seems that we are also trending towards that direction per the studies, per the analysis or the research trend that PC has conducted. As usual, there will be a disclaimer here. The content is purely based on our study in the global trend related to the 5 elements in Chinese astrology and also in the research of the world's geopolitical and financial economic situation, which you can use as a guideline for your investment decision. And you need to exercise caution in the investment, especially in such volatile situation. So you will need to do your own research on the company that you wanted to invest, not only on the commodity, but also on the company itself. And we will not give any stock advice as we are also not a financial advisor. Let's recap a little bit on the energy charts that we have for this year. Okay, we have a lot of woods and also water, and this is the focal point of the earth on the day itself. Let me just, here the water is here and here, the month and the year is a repeat, means that there will be challenges in terms of finance because the focal point here is still the earth, and the water is actually represent the wealth of the year itself, and they are all exposed. What we do is that this is for the whole year, and every month this pillar will change. Okay, this month pillar, it will change. This month pillar, it will change, and from there we will get the outlook for the month itself. Let's look at the upcoming month, which is actually in August. Okay, and in August we find that if you look at the year pillar itself, is water and wood, and in the month pillar is actually the earth and also metal. What happened is that in the 5 element relationship is actually a heaven and earth clash. Whenever there's a heaven and earth clash happening, there will be very major changes expected to come. So how we look at the clash, the year is a water, right? And we will have the earth clash into the water here. Okay, you can see the earth is clashing into the water, and also the tree, the metal is chopping into the tree. So this whole thing is a clash. And what will change? That is the next questions. We will look at the focal point of the year itself, which is earth. And what happened is that the elements is being clashed as water. Water represents financial. That means expected that there will be financial changes. And also, if you look at the earthly stem, is actually the wood. means that there will also be would control of its government, is related to government regulatory. So there will also be a change, a reset in the government or in some major nations' government, and where the matter will chops into the government itself. And later on, we will correlate that studies with the geopolitical changes on how it changed in terms of financial and also in terms of government itself. And if we look at the month pillar itself, this also translates into etching of dispersion, means that there is a wind. This is water. If you look at down there, 1, 2, 3 line, this is actually one full line, 2 broken lines is actually water, and this is wind. That means wind is blowing on water. When wind is blowing on water, it's creating ripples. Okay, so it also shows a ripple of change by itself, and it shows instability as well. Whenever we have this type of hexagram, that means it's not a good sign at all from where we are heading. Means if I were to be an investor, I will be very careful at this time. It could also be an opportunity to, look into potential buying into good assets. There will be a chance there if you look at it. So this is the overall changes that is coming, because all the while, I think people has been saying, big changes are coming. And the question is when. To me, when I look at the chart here from the Chinese astrology, with the major chain of heaven and earth being clashed, means that August, there will be quite a lot of resets, a lot of chaotic things that is going on, clashes, changes that is not going to be very pleasant. Okay, so far, I think this is my analysis on the coming August. It will start actually on August 6 or 7. Okay, so at least this is to prepare you on what is coming. Any question from the Chinese astrology point for the changes? Okay, no, then I think PC, you can continue with your analysis and check whether it correlates with this Chinese astrology chart. Okay, and later we will do a summary also.
Yep, thank you, Evelyn. Okay. So let me just share my screen. So let's talk about the changing economic landscape. Now, I think just yesterday, the EU came out with their so-called agreement, that the EU countries would consume 15% less energy in the coming months prior to the winter, so that they can stock up their resources, energy resources before winter. And this can actually worsen the current condition. For example, in Germany, the PPI is already up 32%, and the business confidence level is down to multi-decades low. So that means that Germany, being the powerhouse of the industrialized EU, will actually face a lot of problems, and potentially some of the industries may have to see further losses, or if not, eventually they may have to suspend operations because they cannot mitigate the rising costs. Now, that is why I think the EU could be facing economic calamity because of inflation and ongoing energy crisis, and because a lot of the companies in Europe has been what we call put on tubes, okay, which means they are supposed to die, okay, but they have now become zombie companies because they are using the debt tube to keep pumping money into these loss-ridden companies in order for them to sustain. keep on sustaining these companies because they are afraid of major job losses. So that's why I think if the inflation and with the EU also just increased interest rates, and because of these dual issues, these companies may really have to close. And if, let's say, they close, that means that the debt that investors have bought to support these companies, or the EU itself has supported these companies, means that, you know, the debt will not be able to be recovered. And if, let's say, we have that, then the ECB could be in for a major problem, because if a lot of the companies that becomes zero rise, okay, which means the company failed, then it will blow up the ECB balance sheet, because the debt which the ECB bought from the market is actually its assets. So meanwhile, the ECB has not actually started QT at all. It's still doing QE, because it had promised that it will support the weak nations. So that means that whenever when the ECB keeps on printing money, money that is printed is always a liability. But when the quality of the asset, which the debt that it buys, keep on falling, that means that at some point in time, the ECB could have negative equity. And that could be a signal that many countries within the EU would have lost confidence in the ECB. Now, that could herald a financial crisis in the EU. So I cannot be certain that all this will happen in the month of August, but definitely we can see all this snowballing into August, okay? Because already the signs are there, okay? The business community in Germany are already voicing out, okay? And people are already, you know, demonstrating against the harsh economic landscape. So, and in the US, for sure, the US is already in a recession. Q1 GDP fell 1.6%. Atlanta GDP now forecast is at 1.6% up to last week. But yesterday, there's also some economic indicators which are very negative. So that means that the Atlanta GDP forecast, which is going to update today, may see the growth of the GDP turning more negative. Now, I think recession is definitely in for the US, because 2 days ago, Janet Yellen, you know, the Biden admin want to front run the recession by shifting the goalposts. What I meant to say is that Janet Yellen came out and said that even though there could be 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, it does not signal recession, because jobs within the US is very strong, okay, and jobs should be considered as an important economic indicator. And besides that, Yellen stated that that whatever the outcome, it has to be measured against the Fed's own modeling. So this is like telling you that they are acknowledging that the second quarter GDP is going to be negative, and they want to front run it, saying that don't be mistaken, even 2 quarters is negative, it is not recession, because we have strong jobs growth, okay? And also we have to measure it against the Fed's expectation. So this strong job growth is actually a lie, okay? Because like last month, the US job growth showed a beat, okay? Hitting, I think, 300 over 1,000 jobs versus expectation of 200 over 1,000. But actually, the number of people that there were actually more people holding multiple jobs with a lesser amount of people holding a single job. So that means that people are finding the inflation as biting very hard, and therefore they are looking for more jobs, and that's why we see this expansion in jobs being created. Okay, but actually, if we look at the number of part-timers and the number of full-time workers, it actually fell. Okay, so that means that the job scope was created because people who are continued to be employed are actually working on more jobs, and that is telling you that the economic reality is not as good. Now, whatever jobs growth there is, jobs is always a laggard when it comes to deteriorating economic situation. So company won't fire someone or lay off someone before an economic event. Okay, they will only retrench people, lay off people when the economic event has started, and continue to foresee it being poor, and therefore they will actually cease to hire. So that is why job is actually a laggard, and I think the harsh reality would present itself in the coming months, just as the unemployment claims in the US is already moving up to an 8-month high. So that is telling you the deterioration in the US economy. Now, of course, in China, there is an immediate challenge in that there's a mortgage crisis in the making. Although currently it is said that it involves anything from a few hundred billion to almost a trillion or two, but there are certain changes that are going to come in. I think the mortgage crisis might not snowball into what the Western analysts expect, because China has created a new fund to help the development of store projects, so that it will actually allow the completion of the project. And according to a source of news that I have received last night, I have not verified it as yet, China is approaching the more fundamentally strong developers in Hong Kong to actually help in completing the store projects. So most of the Hong Kong developers are very strong financially. They have vast amount of resources, which
like
they can, yeah, and the Quad Group, the Sun Hong guys.
Yeah,
okay?
the Quad Group.
Yeah, so I was told that China has approached all these developers in Hong Kong to help expedite the completion of all these projects. So I think at this point, then it could be arrested, because that problem could be arrested because a lot of the Chinese property players have always been highly leveraged. Yeah, in fact, companies like Evergrande, they do not only focus on the property development, but they went all the way to start their own electric car business. And also, when a company loses focus from their main business undertaking, then you can see a dispersion of resources, which can be very damaging if not done correctly. Yeah. So the other thing that is on the horizon is the mounting debt crisis in emerging market economies due to the strength in the US dollar and rising interest rate environment. Now, the US dollar, when it becomes strong, yeah, it makes a lot of companies and governments in emerging markets very nervous, because more often than not, given their poorer currency value in relation to the US dollar, most of them would borrow in US dollar, so that converted to local currency, they are able to splurge, okay, do a lot of things. But the moment when the US dollar start to rise, then you can see that, for example, the US dollar have risen close to 8% against the ringgit, 8 to 10% against the ringgit. So then, the burden of servicing that US dollar denominated debt becomes more expensive. And because of rising inflation, especially if governments need to borrow money to refinance a US dollar debt, then that cost becomes even more expensive. Okay, you'll be borrowing at a high interest rate to pay for loan or pay for borrowings that are done at a lower interest rate environment. So that could spell disaster for emerging markets. And some economies like Turkey, Pakistan, I think Argentina are in for a shock, and this could quickly escalate into major crisis. Even in India, the rupees have weakened significantly against the US dollar, and this could pose a risk also to the Indian economy. Yeah. So of course, in the midst of all this, we will have mounting disobedience, demonstration, and riots. Sri Lanka has already seen its government collapse. Draghi, the Prime Minister of Italy, have given his resignation, and Boris Johnson is already out. I think in the month of August, we can see some escalation, and that escalation would actually result in some collapse in emerging markets economies, and potentially we will see some Western economies also suffering. In particular, in the peripheral regions, okay, which means Italy, Spain, Portugal, Greece, all these economies that have high debt would actually see more demonstration and civil disobedience, and really have civil disobedience in Netherlands, okay, and in Germany as well, because of the EU's policy. Now the EU ESG policy is actually destroying the entire EU's economy, in a sense that right now they want to restrict emission of nitrogen gases, which has a lot to do with fertilizers. So they are urging all the farmers to cut their fertilizers. So this is actually very nonsensical, or to the bordering to idiocracy, okay, because without fertilizer, you cannot have sufficient food. Without sufficient food, the price of food will escalate, and people would face hunger, and there'll be even more civil disobedience, demonstration, and riots. So it's like, because of wanting to fulfill the ESG policy, it's destroying the economies. But again, the EU,
okay.
Yeah. So the EU wants to destroy the farmers' economy in the EU, but meanwhile, because of the energy crisis, they are buying coal as an alternative to meet their energy needs. Okay, so coal actually emits the most carbon gases. Okay, but now you can see actually how double standard they are. Okay, so that's why this changing economic landscape, already we see some shift in policies. Okay, and this shift in policies would create even more challenges against the government, and I think it will escalate as the summer months becomes hotter, people's temperature rise higher, and there will be serious demonstration. I think
there will be global heating also. You know that now the global temperature is abnormally high as well.
Have to postpone all their flights because the runway has melted due to the high heat. Okay, no longer safe.
Yeah.
So I think there will be of course, I think the August we will see the shift in political situation, but let's look at the all this on our geopolitical segment. Now, talking about the changing financial landscape, now BRICS is planning its own reserve currency backed by the nation's currencies, similar with the IMF SDR, the special drawing rights. So, and right now, a lot of countries are applying to join BRICS. We have Saudi Arabia, we have Turkey, of course, Iran and Argentina will be admitted into the BRICS. Okay. Then all this actually shows one trend, the trend of the dollarization. Now, especially when, why emerging economies want to join BRICS? Because BRICS have promised that their whole currency system would be based on fairer equity and not subject to the ratings. So that's why where emerging economies, their plight, okay, the plight of the nation is subject to what the rating agency sees. Okay, for example, due to political reason, they can actually downgrade. For example, they downgrade Russia's debt because the US government would not allow, investors of Russian debt to receive rubles as a form of payment. They must receive US dollar, but since Russia cannot have access to US dollar, the rating agency branded Russia's debt as poor, okay, rated very poorly. So that's why, due to political whims of the US, the rating agencies like Fitch, Moody's, and S&P, they can actually downgrade sovereign countries' debt to suit the political needs, and therefore creating, ripples of financial instability within a country. So because of that, a lot of countries sees the need to get out of the US dollar trading system. And if, let's say, they are out of the US dollar system, they can actually trade using their currencies, their internal currencies, and therefore it gives support to the local currency's strength. And that is where the appeal of BRICS currency lies. They will actually have a own reserve currency, and then you have multiple countries' currency, and they can trade not necessarily using the reserve currency, but between each other using dual currency swaps. Okay, it's just that the reserve currency is the main currency that all other nations would reference to. Okay, so probably the BRICS will see the inevitable collapse, okay, of the debt-based monetary system and need to insulate against it, or to hasten the collapse of the debt-based monetary system. Now, the debt-based monetary system here refers to the ECB, the Federal Reserve System, which allows these developed nations to actually print money, useless paper, and buy resources from the emerging market economies, and also buy goods. Okay, so they just print paper, but they can consume the goods from other countries, consume their resources. So they see it as that they do not, they see an imbalance in this system. Okay, why is it that the developed economies have the most say, okay, in terms of voting rights when it comes to IMF and World Bank, but they consume the most from the emerging economies? So that's why BRICS see the imbalance. And actually, BRICS wanted to have more voting rights in IMF when they proposed, I think was in 2010, that they said that they wanted to have more voting rights, but they will inject 70 billion US dollars into the IMF fund. But the US aligned IMF decided not to allow it, and therefore they started their own new development bank. Okay, and right now the new development bank has members from, they actually expanded the membership to Bangladesh, okay, to Uruguay, and to UAE, as well as Egypt. Now, you can say that these countries have little significance when compared to the developed nations, but compared among themselves, Bangladesh economy has grown by triple digits over the last 10 years. UAE is the trading hub and major gas producer. It's also a financial hub in the Middle East. Egypt economy is, I think, is ranked the top few in terms of purchasing power parity. And Uruguay is number 3 in terms of purchasing power parity in South America. So all these countries, measuring by purchasing power parity, or PPP, means that these countries have the ability to continue to grow because of their growing population. Yeah, and then there's another development that is coming up, which is the EU plus China, which is working on a reserve currency backed by commodities and the nation's currencies. Yeah, so this means that there is a dual system right now in the making. BRICS would be more encompassing because it covers South America, Africa, Asia, and Europe. Whereas EU is actually Central Asia, Eastern Europe, as well as Russia and China. So this currency is an experimental currency because they want to back this reserve currency by using the country's commodities as well as currencies. Now, the importance of it is that, of course, Russia has 70 trillion worth of resources, okay? And China is the world industrial giant, okay, which can actually have the production capacity, okay, besides the monetary resources. So that is why Russia and China would play a lead role in helping develop a reserve currency that is backed by commodities and other nations' currencies. So the weight of each currency will be based on each country's GDP. So that is why it depends on the capacity of each country, how they will actually be weighed against that reserve currency. Of course, if a countries have vast resources, but their GDP is somewhat lacking, then it still have a fairer chance of getting a proper weight in terms of measurement. So this is an experiment and it will take a longer time. But BRICS, I think, will start very soon, okay? Because as I mentioned, BRICS nations sees a potential imploding of the debt-based system because the debt has become unsustainable. And hiking interest rate to combat inflation will just create more debt crisis. So that's why I think they are in a rush right now to come up with a reserve currency so that they quickly insulate themselves against a potential collapse of the Western-based monetary system. Now, as they develop the commodity-backed currencies, I think then it will absorb into the BRICS. It will merge together as one. And once that is done, then the BRICS reserve currency will be very, very strong because it will be backed by commodities. So that is the kind of changing financial landscape that is moving now at a much faster pace to herald a change, okay, a shift over from the US dollar-based system. Now, of course, the biggest question is, when will the Fed pivot given the deteriorating economic conditions? Will it be in the month of August? If you have been following what the Fed has been doing, the Federal Reserve have not even really started on QT yet, okay? Although they have increased interest rate, and today likelihood they will increase interest rate higher, but the Fed actually said from the beginning of 1st of June, the Fed would actually have QT ranging at $47.5 billion a month over the next 3 months. So which means by July, end of July, the Fed would actually have embarked on a QT closer to 95 billion. But what's the surprise? The surprise is that at the end of last week, the Fed QT quantity tightening, which means reducing the Federal Reserve balance sheet, their total assets, have only been reduced a little bit over 10 billion. So what does that tell you? If the Fed cannot fulfill their QT policy, that goes to tell you that there is underlying financial stress within the system because there's a lack of US liquidity. So that's why they want to continue supporting the the financial market, and that's why they cannot launch QE to the tune of $47.5 billion a month. And on top of that, the Fed's reverse repo action, which is actually another method to pump money into the system, okay, have risen to more than $2 trillion per day. Previously, last year, it was at 1 trillion. And the year before that, it was less than 1 trillion. So that goes to tell a lot of stories that all this liquidity pumping goes to show that there is severe financial stress in the entire financial system. And August could be one that will test the Fed's determination whether they would want to continue hiking or not. Because if they hike today, interest rate would be around 2.25 to 2.5% for the Fed funds rate. Now, the last time the Fed funds rate reached 2.5% was in September 2018. And what ensued over there, over the next 3 months, was that the stock market dropped almost 20%. So right now we are back to that level, okay? So at 2.5%, it will be very testing for the Fed whether they can even at all push higher, because that would mean that there will be a blow up in the mortgage market, okay? There will be a blow up in the debt market in the US, because last time they did it up to 2.5%, the stock market collapsed close to 20%. So right now, the stock market has collapsed. If we look at the S&P, it has collapsed about 17 or 18%. So will at 2.5 add another 10 or 20% to it? Chances are it could, okay? And that's why, like Evelyn said, you need to be a bit more wary in your investment decisions, yeah? So it will also, the earliest indicators, economic indicators is showing that July is going to be another bad month. Okay, so whether by August, the Fed will then say that they are going to stop raising interest rate. So these are the things that, you know, in some ways indicate that the Fed may have to reset their policy. They have to redo their policy, or to change their policy depending on the economic situation. So now, of course, at the end of the day, I see a much larger picture for the role of the BRICS, okay, because the EU and BRICS will be merged into and expanded into the BRI, SCO, and ASEAN. Now, BRI is the Belt and Road Initiative, countries which are signed up with China in that regard. The SCO is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, okay, and of course ASEAN. Now, coming out of ASEAN, Indonesia has been the most vocal in urging ASEAN nations to trade using a bilateral swap of their local currencies with the Chinese renminbi, okay? And Indonesia is going to be, over the next few years, by 2030, Indonesia will rise as the 6th highest country in terms of GDP by purchasing power parity.
Yes,
okay?
Actually, in the next period, Indonesia is going to be also a nation to watch out for, because they are going to go very fast. They are all in the same latitude as China. So every nation there, they will have, you know, quite good tidings in the next 20 years. And I think the days of Indonesian mates will be over also.
Yeah, it will be the days of Malaysian mates in Indonesia. And then we are screaming, you know, how come our Malaysians are being maltreated? But that's how it is. You know, Indonesia economy have already powered up. Okay, so much so that just to share with you, Indonesia is one of the among the top few nickel mining country in the world, and all the while Indonesia is producing nickel and it's sent to China to be manufactured into car batteries. So Indonesia decided that, hey, you know, we cannot be doing this all the time. Otherwise, we got no skills. Okay, what we have skills is actually in mining. So that's why they actually start to change and demanded that if you want our nickel, you have to develop the upstream business. So, of course, you know, a lot of countries would be saying, you know, wow, you want me to help develop, then, you know, our own economy would suffer. But what happened was that CATL, which is one of China's largest car batteries manufacturer,
Amperex.
Yeah, you know, they actually they are actually collaborating with Indonesia to start a battery plant so that they help Indonesia develop their EV industry.
Okay, in a way, because I'm also into battery for many years. I manage all this, even CATL, so contemporary Amperex. So what happened is that this Amperex, if they build plants in Indonesia, is also good for them. You know why? Probably they will bring the polymer cell, those like lightweight polymer cell that you see in your handphone. They are more manually manufactured because there are many shapes, forms, and size. So it's impossible to have very large scales like cylindrical cells that Tesla is using. So most probably they are going to bring that technology or that plant to Indonesia, and they will use that the cheap labor there to to start this manual process as well, because Indonesia can supply a lot of labels and these are all more manual process.
Yeah, I think in that sense, the Indonesia know how to leverage because they actually have they have the nickel. So then they can demand, okay, that you help us develop, you can continue to have the mining rights. Okay, so that's why I think China would actually help Indonesia plan its new economy to a certain extent, and that's why Indonesia would rise as a powerhouse. Now, the other big thing is that, of course, the SCO, some of you might not have heard about it. SCO is the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and it is an organization that covers Russia, China, India, Pakistan, a number of the other stance country, okay, in Central Asia. I can't recall which, but most likely will be those Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Tajikistan, and also Kazakhstan.
Also,
okay,
yeah, something.
Yeah. So the stance countries. So and right now the emerging new partner of the BRI and with SCO Club is Iran. Okay, now with Russia, Iran, and China, they would actually have political and geopolitical clout over the entire Europe, Middle East, and Far East. And that could mean a lot of things. Okay, so that's why eventually all these blocks of countries would gradually merge in terms of economic and trading activities using a lot of bilateral swaps in currencies. And that's why when you have ASEAN, when you have Middle East and Asia moving towards a BRICS currency, that is easily not forgetting Africa, okay, because BRICS, part of BRICS, South Africa is actually in Africa, and new members that are being considered will be Nigeria, which is a major oil producer. So including Africa, then you're talking almost like 80% of the global population, okay, because the US and Europe added together is less than 1 trillion people. The others are moving towards a bilateral kind of trade agreement with swap deals and all those. That would mean that a huge percentage of the trade will be outside the US dollar. And if let's say that happens, then we are going to see hyperinflation in the US, where all the money previously printed is now unwanted and is being shifted back to the US, and then US will have hyperinflation, and because of that, they cannot continue to print money. Okay, so when the full integration of this new monetary system across the relevant groups will hasten the development of trade outside the US dollar, and it will spell the end of the US global hegemony. So that's why this will take place, I think, over the next few years. But some immediate changes we will start noticing. And I think in the coming months, you will see this country announcing a bilateral swap with either China or Russia, okay? And this will continue, okay? Now, the other thing, the changing geopolitical landscape. The international rules-based order touted by the West will be challenged by the global South, which means a lot of the southern countries in a lot of the countries in the southern hemisphere. Now, actually, the international rules-based order is nothing but based on colonial ideals that is touted by the West. Because, for example, the USA international rules-based order to freedom of navigation, the US was never even a party to sign the conduct of marine. It is actually a resolution, with regards to the conduct in the seas. Okay, so US is not a signatory to it, but it keeps on harping about freedom of navigation. Okay, and demanded that others follow its own international rules-based order. So, and the other thing is that US is getting more involved with Taiwan, from politicians' visits to arms sales, further challenging China's red line. So now, just now I mentioned about the SCO and all this. Because of the growing clout, the US sees the urgency to actually rein all this in and destroy these economies before its own economy is destroyed. Okay, now this is something like the Thucydides trap, okay, in which which is one currently sitting global power will not accede to an emerging global power without a war. Okay, so that's why you can see US is trying to egg Taiwan into a declaration of independence, saying that they will support, is trying to get Australia involved, is trying to get Japan involved, Korea involved to defend Taiwan. But US will not defend Taiwan. It will just continue to sell weapons so that it benefits its military industrial complex. Yeah. So that's why we have NATO, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and sorry, a typo here. Forming an alliance against China and challenging the status quo. So this is something that is going to escalate, okay? Because the whole intention is to prevent Russia and China from expanding, because they are the only global powers that can challenge the US. So that's why they are getting a lot of countries to fight against this country, like recently.
Ukraine and all this.
Yeah, Ukraine is a proxy war, okay? And another thing is that Israel and US is also, there are talks that they are planning to launch air raid, okay, airstrike on Iran, okay, because Iran has got Russia and China support. Now, recently, Gazprom, Russia's largest oil and gas company, has signed a deal to invest 40 billion in Iran to develop its gas resources and build a pipeline from Iran all the way to India. Okay, and just last year, China announced a $400 billion investment in Iran over 25 years to cover everything from developing Iran's e-commerce, banking and financial institutions, to the development of petrochemical plants, and to development of Iran's security needs, okay, which means using China high technology, okay, to meet security needs, and also to help to allow Chinese military presence to protect their assets in Iran. So that was last year. So even before that, Russia has already an air base in Iran. So as China's military members enter into Iran to develop Iran's security needs, and then Russia, expanding their presence militarily in Iran, Iran will become a country to be reckoned with. Okay, and all the while, Iran has the option to block the Straits of Hormuz to prevent more than 20% shipment of oil from the Middle East to the global market. And that is the threat of Iran. And that's why when Israel and US are said to be planning attack on Iran, that means that there is some desperation, that Iran may grow to become much stronger. Now, in the Taiwan side, okay, definitely they want to create some trouble because the US would not want to have a direct war with China, but they would ask other nations to come and protect Taiwan, okay, so that China resources is being committed to the war, and therefore it will weaken China economically. So that is what the US wants, okay. So the other thing is that the US is also very mindful in the sense that because Argentina has also joined BRICS, okay, Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia has signaled their intention to join the group. So the US realized that its influence in the Middle East is being threatened. Yeah. So like recently, Biden visit to Saudi Arabia has been a disaster. Okay, but Russia's visit to Iran has been a huge success. So that is why I think eventually Saudi Arabia and Iran would come to terms with their own strategic needs. Okay, and I think Russia would play an important role in bringing all the parties together, so that to reject the US dollar. And even Saudi Arabia has signaled their intention to sell their oil to China using renminbi. Okay. Now, another development is that China is helping Saudi Arabia develop their missile program. Okay, because the Saudi kicked out the US Patriot system. The other thing is that once Saudi Arabia and Iran comes to terms, then the whole Middle East would be united. And Russia is already playing a role right now, in a sense that why Biden's visit to Saudi Arabia was a disaster, in that there's no way Saudi Arabia would allow the price of oil to be capped by the US, because right now they are enjoying tremendous profit. So what Russia did was that, it told Iran and Saudi Arabia and all the major oil producers, okay, it's okay, I will sell my oil to you at a discount so that you can sell your oil to Europe and to US at a high price. So that's how Saudi actually became very, very rich, and Iran as well. In fact, I read a report today, Iran's oil revenue increased 580%. So imagine if you are Saudi Arabia, Russia sells its oil to you at, let's say, 30% discount, okay, then you can sell at the market rate to your oil needs, okay, you can use it all for export because you're importing cheaper from Russia. So that means that, their revenue is going to be ballooned. And because of that, there's no incentive for OPEC, okay, to even accept the EU and US demand to cap the price of oil. Now, very dangerously, if let's say they enforce this, Russia already said that they will remove their oil from the market. And if let's say they remove their oil from the market, there are, JP Morgan's actually mentioned that depending on how much they remove, if they remove about 3 million barrels of oil per day, that would spike oil closer to $200 per barrel. And if they remove 5 million barrels of oil per day from the market, it could spike oil up to 380. You can actually, do a Google search, it's all there. So that's why this is how dangerous the situation has become in terms of, trying to cap the price of oil, because it would herald an inflationary process that would hit all countries, okay? All because of wanting to stop Russia, okay, from expanding, okay, its military action into Ukraine. And Russia will actually expand its military action into Ukraine. And so far, Lavrov, Russia's foreign minister, have already stated Russia has no intention of stopping just at the Donbas area. And as I mentioned in previous episode, very likelihood Russia would expand all the way south and west to including Odessa and reunite with the majority of Russian-speaking people in Transnistria. So because of all this changing political situation, the long-standing petrodollar will be challenged because countries are rejecting the US demand, okay, to accept the cap in the price of oil. They are now rejecting all this. So that's why, all this would continue to develop over the coming years, and we can gradually see the US position weaken. And that is why the US is hungry for war, because according to the Pentagon paper, if the US does not stop China by 2025, China would be unstoppable thereafter. So that is why we see all this happening. Now, of course, in August, what will change dramatically? And that is Pelosi's upcoming visit to Taiwan. Okay, and China already has threatened that they might consider military action, okay, as a response. Now, I think it might not necessarily lead to a so-called kinetic action, but maybe an embargo on Taiwan. And of course, China already said that if Pelosi's visit, it will test, China's bottom line, and that could likely lead to a reset in US-China relations. And if, let's say, there's a reset in US-China relations, China would actually then go all out, okay, and support Russia and Iran. That means that since if the relations turns bad, okay, US may implement a lot of sanctions, okay, like Russia. Russia previously was holding back on Iran because of the threat of sanctions. But since that Russia now is the end receiver of the worst of sanctions, Russia say, okay, so be it. I'm going to develop with whoever I please, whoever that serves my geopolitical, economical, as well as financial needs. So that's what, definitely it's going to be something very serious. And I think it's going to be a reset in US-China relations. And right now in the US, we have people from the Republican Party saying that Pelosi should go to Taiwan. Otherwise, US will be seen as fearful of China. And if, let's say, US is seen as fearful of China, then, US would lose face in the geopolitical environment. And that's why they say that, Pelosi should not cancel, Pelosi should go all the way in. And, show that the US is not fearful of anyone. So that's why we will know this in the next few weeks, okay, whether Pelosi would actually visit or not. But definitely, if there is a visit, we can immediately see a reset in US and China relations. Yeah. So Evelyn, maybe you would like
Yeah.
to do the summary on your side.
Okay, yes. Let me just put it in the summary. Number one is that as correlated to PC studies, there will definitely be a reset. There will definitely be a reset in the financial system. Okay, either it will be fast or it will be slow, because chances that if a clash, then it will be a fast. Rules, regulations are being challenged. That means government are being challenged, and there will be instability that people needs to hold on to their faith, even we ourselves as well. And really what the world needs now is really a good leader to help, to pray for a good tidings to come. If not, there will be a risk of crises, riots all over because of inflation, people going hungry, people then unemployment. Then people, once all this kicks in, then there will be a lot of instability comes in as well.
Yep. So that's why I think in terms of the reset in the financial system, what to look out for will be the BRICS and the EU reserve currency. Okay. And the other thing, of course, the reset could be a reset in Fed's policy. Okay. Because suddenly things are so bad that the Fed will actually do a U-turn. Hey, let's do a reset on our policy. We will not, we will stop raising interest rate. We would stop QT and observe where the economy will be over the next few months before seeing any other needs to whether to raise or to cut interest rate. So that could be also a reset of the Fed's policy. And the other thing is that, of course, as I mentioned, the international rules-based order is being challenged. Okay, and then it's challenged not only by China, but a host of countries that have been the receiving end of US dollar hegemony. Okay, and the other thing is that China's red line is also being challenged by the US. So this is a two-way process. Okay, but I think one of the thing that could be a major challenge would be in the challenge of the people against their own local governments. Okay, and we can see an expansion of riots, demonstration, enough to bring governments down. Okay, and this could expand further into other countries, especially emerging markets. Economies are very vulnerable because of their dependence on energy and the rising inflation. And of course, mounting economic crisis will be the main feature. Okay, and economic crisis will not just be in emerging markets, but also in the developed nations as well. Although emerging market economies has a higher risk of collapse. So all these are coming to a head over in the next few months, and some particular ones we will see whether the extent of what will happen in July towards the middle of August. We will see what will happen over the next few months. Yeah. So Q&A, anyone have any questions?
Oh, yes. DC, I wanted to ask regarding US dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, well, how long do you think it will sustain that at this exchange rate of high US dollars? Because even the economy is down, but their rate of exchange is quite strong. I don't really mind, because I also earn some US dollars from my courses.
I think the US dollar days are numbered. Okay. But then we have to measure how it is now. For example, people say US dollar is strong. Okay, but the strongest currency this year is actually the Russian ruble. Okay, which has appreciated more than, I think, about 20% versus the US dollar pre-war. Okay, Ukraine. So at the end of the day, if we want to measure the strength of the US dollar, when you measure with other currencies, it's like all the currencies here are actually unbacked. They are just fiat currency. It's just that the US is the cleanest shirt in the rubbish dump. But if let's say we were to measure against commodities, then any weakness, okay, due to the Fed's reversal of policy would actually bring the US dollar down, but also would bring up the price of commodities. So actually much depends on the Federal Reserve action. Now, the Federal Reserve cannot keep raising interest rate because of the US total debt. Total debt in US is more than 90 trillion, which is more than 3 times its GDP. That includes corporate debt, include household debt, and government debt. Now, if we measure, for US, they have the Social Security as well as Medicaid, which they actually help subsidize, okay, medical for retirees and people of such status. They also have Social Security, which very much like our EPF. They actually have zero funding. That is why the unfunded liabilities of US in Social Security, okay, and in the Medicaid is easily about $200 trillion. So that is why the total US debt plus unfunded liabilities as a percentage of GDP is actually more than 1,000%. So that is why there is a certain limit which the Fed can raise interest rate, because if they continue to do so, they will not only implode the entire debt market, but they will also implode the pension system. Now, most of the US pension, whether it's through corporations also have their own pension plans, okay? Now, most of the pension plans in the US are underfunded by about 30 to 50%, which means that, sooner or later, they run out of funds to keep paying the pensioners. And that, because of that, previously they used to invest in government bonds. When government bonds were actually 6 or 7%, 8%, then they are able to continue to see their funds being replenished, okay? But with government bonds right now at 2%, 2%, they cannot get the replenishment that they want. And what these pension funds did was that they invested the bulk of their funds into the stock market. So if the Fed continue to increase interest rate and the stock market collapse, although the stock market may have gone up, okay, since 2008, may have gone up by a few 100%. Let's say the S&P 600 to, let's say, 3,600, that's about 600%, 700% for that matter, have gone up 700%. But a collapse of the stock market by 50%, that means that, these pension funds could be in trouble, which means that the previous gain, okay, from 600 points to 4,200 points, if 4,200 points collapse 50%, that means it's down to 2,100 points. That means that a huge bulk of their funds have been wiped off, okay? And if let's say this is being wiped off, okay, then they will actually have a funding crisis, okay, because suddenly, they do not have sufficient funds to continue paying their people, especially in a deteriorating economy. They also do not have the funds, okay, that people contribute, because people will be laid off.
Yeah, because the baby boomers are the
Yeah.
majority of the population
Yes,
now
you're
that's
correct.
right. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yes. The
It's
baby
not
boomers started retiring about
around
5
this
years
time.
ago.
Yeah.
Started 5 years ago, but the bulk of it will be over these few years that will demand their pensions. So the biggest bulk, because the baby boomers lasted about post-World War all the way to about 1960s.
I
So
think
about,
late 60s.
yeah,
I'm also in the baby
yeah,
boomers
about 20 years.
rank. Yeah.
Yeah, about 20 years. So which means the baby boomers started retiring last 5 years. So that means the bulk of it will be the coming 10 years, you know. So these 10 years, if they have insufficient funding, then the pension funds would collapse. And that is why the Fed cannot continue raising interest rate. So at some point in time, the Fed will have to say, you know, we can't do it anymore. Then they have to pump liquidity into the market, start QE and all those. Now, when that happens, the US dollar will continue to deteriorate, inflation to move up.
Oh, I think we lost PC for a while. His line is not very stable since this morning, so bear with us for the time being. Oh. Oh, I think, hello. He's just dropped off. Let me just call him and see what he wants to do. He's back again. We cannot hear you, BC. Y'all can hear BC or not?
Can you hear me now?
Can.
Yeah. So although although I say that I don't give advice on stocks and all those, but I think one of the if you are interested in investing, I think one of the better ones would be in the uranium market. Yeah, because of the energy crisis, and if let's say should anything happen to the price of oil that it suddenly skyrockets, then I think the uranium market would actually take off. Because uranium, if we want to calculate in terms of energy output, one pound of uranium can provide more energy, you know, than, you know, for example, you know, acres of solar panels and things like that. So that's why, you know, in an energy crisis, uranium would be one of the better beneficiaries. Although oil will also actually oil would actually perform well in this scenario. So
maybe we will.
That's why.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, this is also in line with the next period. Maybe we can have a series of talk on, you know, what will happen in the next 20 years and what is the best sectors that, you know, will boom in the next 20 years to help our audience here to make their investment decision for the future. So we can hold that series of the talk as well. And uranium is definitely a good choice. Anything that deals with chemical energy is one of the trends that I'm also looking into in the next 20 years.
Yeah, for example, there's going to be 330 nuclear plants being built all the way until 2050, if I'm not wrong. And based on current uranium supply, that's not even enough to support new nuclear plants coming in at the end of 2025. So that means that there's more intensive development being needed. Okay, so you know, if you are interested, then you have to adapt a very long-term view. Okay, that uranium cycle is high, you know, up and down. Okay, there's one company which I own. I bought at less than 50 cents, shot up to $1.50, then it dropped back down to 70 cents. Okay, but I still have not sold because I'm not really a trader. Okay, but I'm taking a very long-term view of how uranium would be. China itself will be building about 150 nuclear reactors over until 2035. So you need to have patience if you are in that sector, and that's why I think commodity cycle is still intact, because once the US dollar weaken, then there'll be a lot of opportunity to go into the commodities related stocks. But at the end of the day, I think we need to be also aware of certain geopolitical risks, because if as and when any war breaks out, then I think the stock market will be very volatile in that sense. Okay, first reaction is to sell. Okay.
Yeah, we have a question from Ivan Tan.
Yeah.
Can the Fed increase interest rate and do the QE instead of QT at the same time?
I think the ECB has proven that they can, because the ECB said that we will hike interest rate, 50 basis point, but we will do QT to help Italy. Okay, so actually it doesn't really make sense. It's just like, put the left hand money put in the right pocket only. So the Fed will say a lot of things, like they say we will do QT, okay, but it's actually doing QE indirectly, or slowing down the QT process, because they are pumping liquidity into the reverse repo market. Okay, and the Fed will also say that we have increased interest rate, but then the economy need support, so they may do selective type of QE. Okay, I think the Fed definitely can do both, but for better effect, they have to be very singular in their objective. For example, if I want to help the economy, I will do QE and I will cut interest rate. But if the Fed want to do this, which means it's trying to get political mileage, or reassuring the investment community that we are fighting inflation, but behind it, they will actually do QE to actually help the liquidity situation, which means they might want to increase their reverse repo, let's say 2 trillion to 3 trillion, to continue to put liquidity into the market. So that's one thing that they can do, because but right now the QT has not really taken off. It's just a little bit over 10 billion, might as well, it's nothing significant at all. So if, let's say, one of the key things is like you can go to the NY Fed reverse repo, there's a dashboard there which you can actually see the daily reverse repo. So if, let's say, the daily reverse repo keeps on hiking up, okay, keeps on moving up while the Fed has already hiked interest rate, it goes to show continual liquidity problem within the financial system. Then that's one way that the Fed can do it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Any more questions from the floor?
I think silver is the most undervalued commodity right now. If we want to follow the development of silver reached a high of close to $50 in 1980. Now, according to some analysts, adjusted for inflation of over 40 years, silver should be closer to about $250 to $300. That is according to the Fed's current inflation. Inflationary calculation, which puts today inflation at 17%. Then according to the same metrics of inflation, then silver should be closer to about $800 per ounce. So why is silver not taking off? Because silver is the Achilles heel of the entire financial system, because silver is often referred to the poor man's gold, and silver has been money for a lot of people all through thousands of years. Okay, and that is why they want to suppress the price of silver. Now, what is happening right now? The US actually have the COMEX to suppress the price of precious metals. Okay, And the COMEX have been very active all through the years to suppress the price of gold and silver because they want to prevent people from using real money to as a store value of their wealth.
Actually, precious metal will not really do quite well this year because this year also the chart is also quite does not have much of a metal in the this one. That's why it started strong beginning of the year and then after that it deteriorates. So if from the 5 element standpoint, metal might not do so well in the next half of the year.
I think what is important is that the COMEX consists of the bullion banks. Now, the bullion banks are the ones that suppress the price of silver through silver derivatives. So what is happening is that from a long-standing point of being net short, they are now net long. So which means that when they are net long, it goes to show that they are adopting a very bullish stance, okay? Even the producers are cutting their hedging. Now, producers normally hedge the price of silver in case the price of silver fall. But right now, because price of silver has fallen, while they actually had their hedging when silver was in the $20 plus, they are now taking profit from their hedging and they are actually exiting their hedging. So that goes to show the producers are also bullish on silver. But whether silver will take off or not will take some time because out of the 10 or so bullion banks, 3 of them are heavily short in silver. If I can recall correctly, is Standard Chartered, Citibank, and Bank of America. In fact, Bank of America's silver short is estimated to be about 600 million ounce, which is 2/3 of the global production. So that's why even though bullion banks are net long, there are a lot of short position as well from the few banks. So which means that seven or so of the bullion banks are trading against the 3. And that's why the 3 are trying to suppress the price of silver so that they can exit their short. Now, the price of silver will really start to move up when the EV market moves up, because silver is needed in electrical vehicles. In fact, silver is needed in all electronic devices. Okay.
Silver is needed also in solar panel.
Yes, in solar panels. Yeah. So that is how important silver is. And that is why, the bullion banks want to suppress the price of silver because they have vested interest with the electronics companies. Because if the price of silver is low, that means that their production expenses will also be down. But I think, as the global community energized electrically, then the demand for silver will actually move up. And in that scenario, not only silver, okay, we will see copper. Because of electrification of infrastructure, copper will also move up, silver will also move up. What about gold? I can't tell you the price of gold, but I can tell you that the bullion banks have cut short their net short position in this year by 153,000 contracts. That means that they are wanting to quickly exit their short contracts because of some event in the near future. Now, what is that event? Well, a lot of the central banks are using this opportunity to buy gold as their, to add to their reserves, because they worry about if there's a collapse in the debt-based monetary system, the only way that they can recapitalize the banks, the central banks, would be by hiking the price of gold so that, what is bad is turned good, okay, by pushing the price of gold up. Now, there is some event that will happen that will involve gold, because last year, the Bank of International Settlement set gold as a tier 1 asset. Previously, it was treated as a commodity, okay? Now, the other thing is that the new EU plus China development of a commodities-backed currency, it was reported by insiders that are providing liquidity to the gold market, okay, in London, that they part of the three commodities that is considered will be oil, gold, and silver. Okay, so that means that they want to back this back the reserve currency of the EU with these three major components, but there will be other components as well, because there will be copper, and I believe that there could be major metals like maybe iron and such, where or even natural gas, because Russia has the most of all this. So whatever that is being developed will be beneficial to what Russia, China, and the Central Asia economies has. Okay, for example, it might even involve uranium, because Kazakhstan, Russia are the major producers of uranium. Okay, and China, okay, is one of the top few producers of silver. China is the world's largest producer of gold. Russia is number 2. So that's why I think that central banks are very worried, and therefore the bullion banks are being used as a manner to suppress the price of gold, to allow central banks to keep on buying gold, okay, in preparation for some event in the future. Now, how high the price of gold would be actually depends on what percentage are they willing to back the debt-based monetary system with. According to some economists, in order to, let's say, back 10% of global debt with gold, okay, then gold could be already closer to $10,000 per ounce. And if, let's say, were to back total global debt with gold, that would entail gold being $100,000, closer to $100,000 per ounce. So actually, it's dependent on how bad the financial situation is and how they want to recapitalize it using their using the gold reserves. But I, for one, think that eventually they would want to shift over to a digital currency. Okay, what the international banking system will look like in the future will be a shift into digital currency.
Cryptocurrency.
Yeah, whereby it could be backing with gold. Okay, so that could be how the development would be. But of course, if, let's say, the central banks develop their own cryptocurrency, people will still prefer the cryptocurrency that is outside of the government control, which means that if, let's say, they develop the cryptocurrency, then I think there would be a revival for Bitcoin. Okay, where it might also introduce new cryptocurrencies that are being backed by gold, because right now people have learned that the whole cryptocurrency market collapsed because of token-based exchange system that back their holdings with Bitcoin or other digital currencies, so other cryptocurrencies. So this has gone to be shown. This has shown to be a failure, because when a system becomes highly leveraged, okay, like in the token exchanges, there won't be enough Bitcoin to actually support the system because of the leveraged nature of it. So, and because if, let's say, the token collapse, it will drag also Bitcoin. So that's why I think that in the future we might see some of the cryptocurrencies being backed physically by some assets. Okay, at least it shows a sense of stability, and that would perhaps be a more mature development of the cryptocurrency market. Already there's one particular cryptocurrency that is backed fully by gold. Okay, that people can use that digital currency, and based on their storage of gold, and they can, because they also earn interest from that storage in gold. So, this kind of system will continue to be developed, and gradually, I don't think it's the end of cryptocurrencies, because
Oh
technology
no,
will always evolve.
it is the
So,
beginning. Actually, it's the beginning. Next
yeah,
period is all about all this cryptocurrency one. Definitely, maybe we will do a talk on the next 20 years. Yes.
yeah. So because of this kind of development, therefore, especially when it involves crypto, it involves technology and all those. There's only one thing, electrification, becomes more intense. Okay, there'll be needs for more supercomputers to perform that kind of transactions using digital currencies. There'll be more demand from from the basic ingredients that make up the electrification of the infrastructure. That's why I think copper is the most understated commodity out there, because everything that we do require copper when it comes to electrification. Yeah, so that is why some people say that copper is actually the real gold in that sense. Yeah.
It's a very powerful conductor, actually. Copper is one of the most powerful conductor. Even in feng shui, the feng shui master sometimes they have, when your house have negative energy sector, they will use copper to mitigate. But that actually is a scientific, reasons behind that. Why? Because copper is a very powerful conductor that will conduct away all those negative ion, those negative energy. So in fact, all these, 5 elements, they're quite scientific. And then I think for Sally's question about gold, I don't think in short term, the prices of gold will go up for especially for this year. It looks like it, but it's a good commodity to hold. Okay, yeah, there should always be, some gold and silver. It cannot be, you cannot run out of it cannot run out of trends. I would say that is something that evergreens.
I think much depends on how it will evolve. But I think the moment that the Fed pivot, there'll be some support for the commodities sector. But I think if you want to measure gold in terms of the kind of returns that you see in crypto, then I think it will not go into that extent, because gold and silver, perhaps not silver. Silver is a bit more, because it's 50% money, 50% industrial application. So there is some volatility there. But where gold is concerned, I think gold will always be a protector of wealth. Okay. So if you look at the price chart of oil, okay, for over, I think the last time I seen a chart was multi-decades chart. It shows the volatility in the price of oil, okay, in terms of US dollar. But in terms of gold, it is actually pretty stable. So that's what gold is. Okay, for example, if you look at the gold has very long-term kind of effect, I would say. If you look back to the year 2000, from the year 2000 till now, gold has been the best performer, okay, by rising a few 100%, from about $200 right now to about 1,007, is about 800 over percent, okay, versus the S&P, versus the Dow, and I think versus even the Nasdaq, because the Nasdaq has fallen quite drastically. So that is the power of gold, in the sense that it protects your wealth despite all the volatility. And but if you want to make money, okay, then you have to go on speculative ventures, whether investing in the stock market, okay, or investing in if you can accept the kind of nightmarish volatility, for that matter, cryptocurrencies. Okay, for me, most of my investment are in the commodity sector, especially gold, silver, and copper, and uranium. Okay. I bought many of my of the company's shares in this sector. I also invest substantially in the Chinese tech sector. Okay, because I think that's the most is a dark horse in the making. And I do invest a certain portion in cryptocurrencies, although not very actively. Okay, I just leave it there. Some I put it on a stake that earn about 5% interest a year. So just leave it there. You know, I don't speculate much. Okay.
Yeah, I
Meaning
think
is it the time? Yeah,
yes, you
yeah.
can consider cryptocurrency. I have a YouTube video made also on the next 20 years trends that talks about, what will be the trend, and also encouraging, you can pick up some cryptocurrency there. But the main one, you have to be careful because some are empty cryptocurrency. Maybe Bitcoin and Ethereum is the one that have already got application. It must be those that already have application. Like Ethereum is already in the MFT system. So it's something that is worthwhile to look into, like a small amount to diversify to be, more in line with what is in store in the next 20 years era. Actually, we are in a very major reset. That's why all these chaotic things coming in now. And 2024, we will be set our foot into a new era already.
Yeah, I think that a lot of all these, well, as XRP, I don't invest in XRP because um although there are a lot of talks that XRP is worthy because it will be
The next Bitcoin.
not the next Bitcoin, because it is its application is being considered by banking institutions.
Oh, okay, no wonder.
So if let's say the banks start their own digital currency, then it will there were reports that it will be based on the XRP platform. So that is why there is high speculation on XRP as well. For me, my biggest investment in, as a speculative asset, not investment advice, just sharing for knowledge purposes. My biggest actually is in Cardano. Okay. Why Cardano? Because it is an offshoot by the co-creator of Ethereum, and he has a very ideal vision for Cardano. And although right now they have very little applications like Ethereum, but the number of companies that are interested, to go on their platform is also pretty huge. So of course, I think what they are exploring is closing all the loopholes in it that the co-creator found in Ethereum, and Cardano is right now very actively involved in the development of the digital sector in Africa continent. So assuming if they are successful there, then I think Africa will be one of the fastest growing continent in terms of population, and over the coming years would be in economy as well. So that's my reason for in Cardano, but I do own a bit of Ethereum, a bit of Bitcoin, a bit of Litecoin,
Okay.
And some applications that are already in use. For example, in VE chain, which is being used by the Louis Vuitton for using blockchain to encrypt their product quality. Okay, but VE chain is something that I just throw money because it's being used by Salesforce, Louis Vuitton, LVMH. Okay, but it doesn't move anywhere. Okay, so just sometimes you see certain applications being used in in real life by companies, so just put some money there, but so far it's not moving. But you need to be very selective for sure.
I also I'm quite conservative. I only keep it to the main one like Bitcoin and Ethereum, which already has the application. And for the questions, I'm not really in the financial advisor, but at this point, at this price of Bitcoin, maybe it's good also to pick up some. That is just like very small advice. You can always go back to my YouTube channel. Maybe we will put it in the link here. I will put it in the link, and then you can always check that video on the next 20 years, what the trend will be like. And maybe we can have a talk in the future to cover this topic as well on the future of what the world will be like, that were leading to what is good for the park as a growing investment, a growth investment.
Yeah. So any other questions?
I hope that y'all can share with the friends about all this, this talk with all your friends to get more people to attend.
Yeah, because we are doing this out of interest. Since we are not charging, we are also hoping that you can actually like and share our YouTube videos, so that more people are also aware and help our channel to grow. Okay, that's one of our intention, is to show that there's other alternatives to I think with Evelyn knowledge and my understanding of global events, then we can actually merge to maybe give an indication of what is to come. Yeah.
Okay, this one is my channel. I will drop PC's channel also into today's talk. Will also be, once we have edited, it will also be in the channel, in both PC and my channel, but I will sort of do it differently a bit from PC. Okay, hold on for a while. Let me just grab the link from PC. And you can also go and go and support. Why am I just bear with me. Okay, this is PC's channel. And next 20 years is going to be quite challenging. So you need to have either a support in terms of, a lot of research knowledge, and also in terms of some Chinese metaphysics or astrology that can predict the future trend concurrently to help you to navigate the next 20 years. And also maybe, there's also a lot of people that putting up, mindset sharing, like the Silva method and all these things. So these are all the tools that will help you to navigate and be above normal people in the next 20 years.
Yeah. The major takeaway I got from De Silva is, I always remember, nothing is the space for everything.
And they are also quite spiritual in a way. Yeah, De Silva is a mind tapping method. And in Chinese metaphysics, we also have these techniques called, mind tapping. But if I were to couple De Silva methods with Chinese metaphysics techniques of tapping into certain directions energy, it will be even more powerful. And anyway, that one reserved for the future. Okay.
Yeah. So when is our next session?
The next session will be next month. Maybe end of next month, 4 weeks from now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I wait for your date. Okay. Then we'll have the next session. This will be ongoing every month. Yeah. And we'll add things as and when we see fit.
Yes, that's right. And then the next session we will now have a talk about what the next month will come, and also a little bit about futures, about the next 20 years era as well, the reset.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone
who
logged in. Thank you, Evelyn. Okay. Have a nice day.
Thanks, PC.
Bye-bye.
Thank you everyone for listening to this talk. Okay, hope to see y'all in the future. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.